Hello, today I want to go over how to update a record from flow, and this is going to be updating the same record that triggered the flow. We're going to go ahead and choose auto layout for this. We're going to edit our trigger so that it only happens when a record is updated and after the record is saved. The field we want to update today is a date. We're trying to track when a client verbally agrees to a sale so that we can build reports from when it's verbally agreed to how quickly it gets turned around and signed. So the closed won date. So in this case, we're just trying to date stamp whenever it is marked that the client has verbally agreed to a contract. So verbal agreement to contract is a checkbox, and we want it to equal true. You'll notice here we have global constants and a global constant true. Unnaturally, we only want it to update the date once when it is first checked, not every time they save the record and it's checked. All right, we are going to add an element, and it's an update records element. All right. All right, so we want this label up here to be very detailed. This label is what's going to appear on the main flow page that will tell users, your next admin, what element is doing what, without having to go in and open each individual element. All right, and then this description, you could make it even more detailed. Again, we're using the opportunity record that triggered the flow. And the condition to update the record, we do have a condition. So we want to think of all the times we don't want this record to automatically be updated. And that is when our sales representative has already manually put in a date. Perhaps they verbally agreed yesterday and the sales rep didn't get to putting it in until today. So we have the verbal agreement date equals null. We want only when the agreement date, the verbal agreement date is blank. Now we go in here to value, and we can't just type, is blank. Nope, it's got to be in date format. No, nope, none of that. What we do have are we have these global variables. So down here we have $, all of these different things. So $, record is the one we're going to be using for this one. This is the record that triggered the flow. But in this case, that's not going to help us. This will bring up all the fields on the record that triggered the flow to reference back to them. So what we need is a new resource. So to go in here, we're going to need a formula. The formula, the API name, we're just going to put date is blank. And in the description, we're going to add in where we're using this. So used on update element as a condition for updating the verbal agreement date. All right. So the return type is date because it is a date field, but the formula is just going to be null. Voila. So let's go ahead and exit out here, go back to where we were. So now you see it show up as a formula on here, as well as the global variables. We now have this formula. This formula is a resource that we have just created. And then now we can finally set the field values or update the record. So we're going back to the verbal agreement date. And it wants us to enter another date field. And again, it won't let us just type today. It is not recognized. So again, we're just going to go up to new resource. Go back to formula. The API. We're just going to put today's date. All right. And then the description. Again, we have to make sure the data type it returns is the same data type that it's requesting. And the formula is just going to be today. Success. And once again, you can go into our list. We have the $ global variables. And the formulas up here. It even has a little icon to show you that it's a date. All right. So more commonly is before I go into an update record, I will actually go to my left-hand panel and click new resource and do my work from there. So perhaps maybe we're doing today's date. Again, and I'll just go ahead and enter all of my resources before I begin an update record. But basically any field that you need to add, it has to be either from a global variable or from our resource list over here. So anytime you're over here and you need to change something, you can either go in new resource right here or new resource over here. All right, so let's test out our flow. Let's leave on flow. You always want to include the object you're working on, or depending on whatever your naming conventions are, make sure you stick to those. I just like to have that so that all of my flows on the opportunity object will appear right next to each other. right? You always want to debug just to figure it out. And of course, do it in a sandbox first. All right, so we had it triggered. Looks like the record matched the conditions. Verbal agreement date now equals today's date. And it has a good result. And luckily we have rollback mode now. So it undid any changes it made. So everything is looking great. So I'm going to go ahead and activate it and test it over here. All right. And you can see there's no date. We're just going to save. All right. Our verbal agreement date is now today's date. Let's go ahead and clear these out. And we're just going to double check that I am able to mark yesterday's date and not have it erase that manual date that I put in. And there we have it. That is how you update a record from Flow, a field on the same record that triggered the flow. All right, thank you so much. I hope you learned something.